Hey everybody, and welcome to part 2 of my UFO Interceptor build. So, as you know, I was getting ready to paint the model last we left off, and the color I decided to use for the base color was not just a straight flat white, but to mix in a little bit of Tester's light gray, just to tone it down a little bit. The next was to apply the metallic colors here. So there are a few different colors that you can use. Obviously we have this whole tail section that needs to be painted with a light silver color. We've got the landing gear to deal with, as well as some of these other sections here. So I decided to, at least my initial idea was to use metallizer paints by Testors. That did not work out so good. First of all, the application wasn't coming out the way I wanted it to, and so I decided to do something different. In the meantime, a consequence of putting metallizers in my airbrush was that it made it inoperable, so I have to send it out to be serviced. I tried to take up some of the suggestions you guys had with cleaning the airbrush, but none of those worked out. I just couldn't get it to work again, so keep that in mind. If you're thinking about using metallizers, just be very cautious with that. Let me just show you this again here. This is a model that came to my attention from someone on Facebook. This is a much larger representation of the UFO Interceptor. And as you can see, they have this really nice paint scheme here on the back, utilizing various shades of some metallic paints there. We're not going to go quite that elaborate with our model here because it is much smaller. It'd be difficult to get some of those areas masked off. So instead, we're going with two colors, and instead of the metallizers, I'm using Tamiya colors instead here. So I like Tamiya paints because they do go on fairly fine in terms of its mist, so it worked out pretty nicely here. For the light colors, I'm using mica silver. For the darker shades, I'm going to use light gunmetal. And for this particular area here, actually, the light gunmetal wasn't dark enough, so I first applied a light coating of this metallic black, then a light coat of the gunmetal, and it came out quite nice there. Went ahead and painted some of the other parts here. These are the grills that go along the front of the ship, as well as the area that, at least the section that holds the missile. We've got some of the exhaust bells here. Also started putting together the landing gear. And I kind of did the same thing, but in reverse here. I actually applied some of the, or I should say not in reverse, but I used a little bit different paint scheme. I used the light gunmetal first and then applied the mica silver just to make it a little bit darker than the tones that you see along the back here. We still have to paint the skids. Putting these together was not too difficult. Actually, there are markings on the skids to align everything. And then I painted these stripes here on the sections that hold up the landing gear, and I also applied some silver along the tail section. Alright, so as you can see, I did add the two side pieces there, but in addition, I decided to go a little further with the paint scheme here along the rear. So I did add the two stripes, and that was done with the light gunmetal. And then I also darkened up this back piece as well. And what I did there was use a combination of the mica silver as well as the light gunmetal. So I just applied very light coats of each and didn't get a super dark area like you see here on this striping, but kind of somewhere in between. So it's been nice to do a little bit of combination here with the Tamiya paints to get a shade that's kind of in between there. Alright, so one other thing I'm going to do is go ahead and at least cover these seams with a little bit of putty here. So I'm just going to squirt some of this into here and just use a wet Q-tip to take off the excess. So I'm in the process now of applying some weathering here along the backside, and what I'm using is these streaking effects by MIG, and you've seen me use this before. Basically, you just applied it on there, you can see it's sitting there now, and once it's dried, you then use the odorless thinner, which comes in this bottle here, and you just use your brush to create the effect that you're looking for. So there's a little bit of this thinner now on my brush. I don't need a ton of it on there. And you can see here we have some of that grime already dried. I'm just going to kind of brush at it and work at it and create a streaking effect. You can see I already accomplished it here. And I really do think this works. I mean, pastels can work for this as well, but once you get the hang of this, it definitely gives you a good amount of control. Alright, well, before we get started with the decals, I did want to share a couple of things with you. First of all, I wanted to show you the decal sheet that I made for this model. And in order to create this, I utilized two things. One was the decal sheet that came with the kit to create these stripes here. The kit came with a decal sheet which was old and discolored. As you know, this is a very old model, so those were unusable. I did run across another website, however, that another modeler told me about. In fact, it was Andrew Prentice. That is the model I was featuring in the last video as a guide to this build. He came across an Italian fan site that actually had a template for a decal sheet. So I was able to upload that one and use that one as a template as well, and this is what I came out with. Now obviously there's a lot of decals here. They do not all need to be used on the model, but I figured I had a 6x4 sheet of decal paper, so might as well take advantage and use it all and create all these duplicates. Now this is another decal sheet that came to my attention from modeler Jim Votaitis. I was posting some pictures of my build and started talking about decals, and actually he makes one for this particular model. So it looks pretty good here. The one difference that I see is that it's a bit more detailed, particularly with the stripes. So I may end up using bits and pieces from each one here. I've had a hit and miss success with decals that I've made on my own. Sometimes they come out really well, other times they just don't work. Hopefully this will work out well. I actually already tried one decal on the model and it looks like it is sitting pretty nicely there. It is adhered to the surface, so I think this sheet is going to be one of my good ones. Alright, so let's go ahead and move forward now and start applying more decals. Alright, as you can see, things have come along quite nicely. I would highly recommend Jim's decals, though. If you do get a hold of this model, these are perfect for this kit. They're only 15 bucks. That includes shipping, and you can see the link below. That's how you get a hold of them. And he's got other decals as well. So you can see I have the tail end drawing here now. I've got the missile completed, and I do have more decals to put on the bottom section of the ship. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and move forward here with the base. I'll go ahead and finish this other stuff first, of course, but I'm going to show you the completed kit at the end of the video. So I have an idea for the display base. Let me show you what I have in mind for that. Alright, what we have here now is a screenshot from the television show showing the fighters emerging from underground hangars on these circular launch pads. So I have in mind to recreate this little launch pad here as our display base. So the first piece we're going to use is this plastic piece here that I found at the store in San Diego, and all they sell are just plastic items, and sometimes they work on projects for people and they have extra pieces. So every now and then I'll go in and see what they have for sale, because there are these plastic pieces that make great display bases, and this is one here that I found. I bought a couple of these. In fact, what I have in mind was to even use something like this for the Proteus model when I finally get to it. But I thought this would work well because it's circular, and but the other challenge that I had here was to find something to substitute for this ring that you see here at the edge of the launch pad. So what I did was I went to Michael's, just kind of looking around there, and I remember my mom used to work with these rings that would hold cloth in whenever she worked with yarn. And so I went by that aisle there, and sure enough they had rings here that are made for that purpose, and it so happens this is the correct dimension that we need for this project. So we're going to go ahead and attach this to our base, and then I'm going to use plaster of Paris to create a lunar landscape around this. So let's go ahead and get started. Hopefully this will turn out. So as for the Bondo here, I had a bunch of it left over from my phaser rifle project. I decided to use it around the edge here to act as a sealant because I was concerned that after applying the plaster of Paris, some of it might seep through and onto our launch pad here. Also decided to use a little bit of extra here on the edge to give it more textured surface here. Hopefully that'll allow for the plaster of Paris to bind onto the surface a bit better, since the plastic piece here is fairly smooth. Alright, well, in preparation of applying the plaster, I decided to go ahead and use styrofoam as a filler just so we can get the height that we need, and that way it doesn't have to be solid plaster. How the display is looking so far. I went ahead and primed it and allowed it to dry, and I'm going to apply a lighter color here using this Vallejo light gray, and also do a little bit of shading as well. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this up, and I'll show you the completed project in just a second. Alright everybody, I'm very excited to show you this finished project. This is now the UFO Interceptor from Bandai. This ship measures about 8.5 inches from front to back. It is a replica of the ship seen in Jerry Anderson's series, UFO. The model here makes a pretty good replica of the miniature that you see on a TV show. There are a few inconsistencies. Most notably, you'll see the curved windshield here. The miniature actually has a straight windshield from top to bottom, and the model also has a few missing details here along the engines. Very happy that there was a decal sheet available for this model. This again is by Jim Botitis, and you can find this decal sheet among many others that he produces at jbot.ca. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit, and you'll see the detail that you can see along the decals there. Much better than the ones I printed myself. You can see some nice writing here along that red stripe, and all the rest of the writing is nice and sharp as well. At first I was concerned that there might be too many decals, but I think overall it looks pretty good here. One thing that I wish would have been able to be substituted is the windshield. You can see there are some spaces open there. The windshield is a little bit ill-fitting, and you can see even on this side there's some gaps there as well. And you can see some of the interior detailing that I added behind the pilot there, and I'm glad that I didn't do too much more because the windshield is a bit warped, so you're not going to see too much of it there. But it's just enough to give us some background detailing. Also very happy with the detailing and how it turned out here along the back side. These two panels were just blank panels, but just using some pieces of styrene plastic that you can get from evergreen scale models, I was able to create some of the detailing that you see there. And as you know, my goal here was to try to create a display base that mimicked the launch pad from the television show, and I think it turned out pretty well also. Just use an airbrush to darken up and do some shading here, along with just applying some light gray paint. Alright everyone, that pretty much wraps it up here for this project. I hope you enjoyed following me along with this. It was a fun project to put together, something I've been meaning to do for quite some time. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me here on my YouTube channel or at interstellarmother@gmail.com. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.